Good morning, or afternoon or evening, depending on what time you're watching this, or I guess it could be the middle of the night. I wanted to go and edit a few photos with you guys. I wanted to show a few different things. So this is obviously like very underexposed, but I wanted to show you how you can kind of pull this back. This one is probably a little bit closer to how I like to expose my images. And then these are both the same, but I couldn't decide if I liked this face or the smiling face better. I think I just love them both. So we're going to go over a few of these really quick. This first one is where we'll start with the really dark exposure. Obviously it's very overcast, so we can just like pull it up and we don't have too many issues. The reason that I like underexposed images a little bit, this is too dark for me, but I'm not going to lose any of this highlight background back here from the sky. So we can go in here and make a mask, and we're going to select our subject, and Photoshop's going to do all of the heavy lifting for us, which is fantastic, and it's going to create a mask over her. This is normally pretty good. Sometimes you do have to go in and adjust things, but it's normally pretty good. There's no pre-mask setting on here, so that's why it's got this red clipping mask on it. But once I start to adjust, that goes away. So I can pull just my subject up. We're going to pull her up quite a bit, I think. Just to get her. Don't want to make her look too unrealistic, especially, I don't know if you can see back in here where it's not masked her hair super great. So we're just going to kind of do this. Get some of her. See, if I pull these shadows up too high, you can really see where that mask is not accurate. And since this is a tutorial, I'm not going to go too much into fixing this. We're going to warm her up a little bit because she is alive and we want her to look that way. Okay, that's probably good for our mask. So let's go back into just our settings. I'm going to kind of pull the shadows here for the whole image up. I want some extra clarity in there. Just, you can kind of see mostly in her dress, excuse me, the difference that is making. So we just want a little tiny bit just to get all those details in there. I want it to be a little bit more vibrant, but not necessarily saturated, if that makes any sense at all. Sorry, I'm not sure what's in my throat. Okay, the other thing I can't stand is a crooked horizon line, yet somehow I am incapable of photographing a straight image. So I always go in and just adjust that. Let's bring up the entire exposure real quick. I just want to make sure that I don't lose this back here. Warm the whole image. All right, now we can get down in here and do some really fun things. Sorry, I'm not sure what is in my throat. Let's zoom in on her. So see all this noise. The nice thing is Photoshop, Lightroom, whichever one you're in, is really good at fixing this nowadays. So we can just pull our noise reduction slider. Make sure we keep it sharp. There we go. If we want, we can come in here and do all kinds of fun stuff. I'm going to keep this a pretty simple edit. But let's say you wanted her dress to be more purple. This is something that I would do as a mask because we don't want it to affect our background, which is also kind of tinted blue. This was at Blue Hour, so, which for those of you who do not know what that is, it's just after golden hour has gone down and the sun is gone, everything kind of gets this blue hint for a little while. Tint, not hint. Okay, the color grading is something that I really love, but you have to be very careful when you're doing this because you can really, really mess up an image if you're not careful. So these shadows and stuff down here are just a little blah. So we could go in here and say we want them to be more of a different color. If we want to warm them up to make them match her. Now the intensity goes up the closer we go out of the circle. And then the closer to the middle of the circle, it's just kind of a slight difference. So there's without and then there's with. So do you see how you have to be really careful? You don't need it up here. Maybe in some extreme cases, but normally I keep it pretty tucked down here. And then you can kind of just go around this way and decide what you like the best. What I really love this for is on skin. You can go in and let's say she was out in a field with green, so it's really green. You can take this and just go across your color wheel here to the opposite side and fix that. Obviously her skin's pretty good here. We had a white ground, even though it looks really dark. It was wet, but these are out on the salt flats, so it's pretty neutral colored, so there's not a whole lot, but just to show you kind of an idea, we can switch that around, which is really great for color correcting. I'm going to leave it off. I always leave these on. There's none of this happening in this image because there's no light behind her. Normally when you shoot backlit, if you're overexposing or even exposing your subject correctly, you're going to get that. Normally it's like a pink or a purpley, sometimes a blue line all the way around your subject. This is how you can go in and fix that. Normally, if I have to fix that, I'm going to come into manual and work on that, but we don't have that problem today. And then the profile correction for the lens. So I shot this on a 35, which gives a little distortion. So if you watch her face and the outside edges of this image, it just kind of fixes that little issue that gives us there. So, and then again, you can come down here and work on some things if you wanted. This is overall if we want it to be more green, more red, what we want our reds to look like. But I'm going to leave these just how they were. Okay, so that's a pretty standard adjustment here. Let's move into this next one. So this is one that I would typically shoot where she's facing the light at Blue Hour. Unless there's like a really killer background. Typically, once you're into Blue Hour, you want to turn your subjects so that they are facing the light so that the light is still on them. And then that way, they just look really nicely lit. I'm going to fix that horizon line again because I struggle. You can just see how much better. So this, she's got the light. I mean, it's kind of off to the side, but it's a little bit kitty corner behind her here. And the difference that this has on her face versus this one, where she's really well lit. And look at how little noise there is on that image just because I had her facing the light. So same thing, I'm going to pull my highlights down a little bit. I don't have as much work to do when I do this either, because where she's facing the light, I don't need to mask her out. I can, but I don't need to. Like, she's already well lit. When we masked her out over here, it's because we needed to separate her from the background without affecting the backlit hair. But when we turn her, she's exposed the same as our background. So it really makes a big difference. In that, I'm going to pull my blacks down just because I think it gives kind of a punch. You can dehaze things, which I really love to do, but you have to be careful. When you dehaze, it also adds color. It just really saturates that because it's meant for things with haze, which normally takes out your color. So you can do a little bit. Has the opposite effect if you go the other way. Obviously, these are the extremes. We're going to hit that right about there. And then again, I'll pull up some vibrance and pull down my saturation a little bit. It just gives it like the color without it looking like this. Let me show you. So if we just pull up saturation, it gives it that weird funky. But if I pull the saturation down and bump up my vibrance, it's a little bit more natural looking than just bumping up that saturation. And pull our curves. Curves are really fun, and they can change the entire image. So let's say you want like a matte photo. You can come up and just pull your black straight up and then in a little bit, and that's going to give you that matte. This used to be a really popular look. Normally when I used to do that, I would just only play with my blacks here and give it this kind of matte velvety look. I'm just going to pull these up. It's a good tool to fix your histograms also, but just watch your image while you're adjusting because it can do some really funky things over here. And you can do all the colors, right? So see how far over this is here? You can pull this here. I know this looks super funky, but you're going to want to go to your green next. Same thing, and adjust that over just to where it hits, and then do the same for your blues, which is not as much. And then we can go back and be like, oh, that's a little too much still. But you can really fix some coloring issues with the curves adjustment. So we're going to leave that one like this. This one will be a little bit more edited. All right, I'm going to bump up that sharpening, and then I am going to pull this noise reduction. I like the color of everything. I'm not even going to mess with this. This is where people can come in, and if you have a skin problem, you can fix it. Again, just tiny amounts is all you need. You don't want to go to the extreme of anything. These images don't really have a lot that need to be done color grading wise, just because it's a pretty plain background and it's just our subject, and there's nothing really we need to change on her. So that's probably going to be it for that one. But if you just even can notice the difference, this is just so flat and boring. When we turn her to the light, she just really pops. You just want to make sure that you wait to turn your subject to light until the sun has gone down all the way. Otherwise, you're going to get really harsh, unflattering shadows in here. If we wanted to, we could come in and do a brush on here. And I'm going to zoom in. So on here, all I'm going to do is just take my contrast down by using the texture slider and the clarity. So this is just to like smooth out skin. And make it look really nice. Let's see, I might even pull some more of that texture down. And that just gives a really smooth, it's going to kind of blend those flyaways out, any little imperfections. And when you're using the brush tool, if you just hit Command or Control on Mac, it'll turn into this hand, and that's how you can move your image around. Just want to make sure we don't get like her actual details. Sorry about that. Okay. Now you can get all of the skin. If this were the actual image for my client, I would be doing this a little bit more carefully. And honestly, I probably would make 2 separate masks because her arm is looking a little plasticky. So I would probably make 2 separate masks to do her arm a lot less untextured. So there's that. We can go in here and do a new brush. You can either go here and create a new one or just press the letter K, and K will get you a new mask. And come in here. There is some color casting, so I'm going to just get that off her eye. I'm going to come in and just go down here to saturation and pull that down just a little bit. And then take the whites and pop those up just a little bit. And that makes a big difference. So that's my Lightroom, or I'm in ACR right now, but that's all I would do in here. Same kind of thing. These ones are just exposed lighter. And in this situation, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. The other thing you can do, which you can do this in Lightroom and ACR, you can just select the image you like and then select the image you want to copy it to. If you're in Lightroom, you're going to hit Control Shift S or Command Shift S, or there's a little button down here that says sync. In ACR or Camera Raw, you can just hit Alt S and then it will sync your settings. Obviously these were lit totally different, so then we can just come in and pull the exposure down. But then they're going to match, they're going to have the same color grading. I did not copy my mask over because it's brushwork mask, and so if I wanted to come in and do the mask on this image, I would need to go in and manually do that. Let me tell you something else too, that it took me, I don't know, 13, 14 years to realize. When you're shooting and it's dusk like this, I used to be so afraid of noise. This is a pretty underexposed image. There's virtually no noise on this. And if you look over here, I'm at ISO 400, which is pretty low. However, if I wanted to shoot this at f4 and I need to bump my ISO to, let's say, 1600, as long as I'm giving my camera enough light, the noise will still be relatively low. So bumping your ISO is okay, as long as you're giving it enough light. Now, if I had shot this, see, this is a 1200th of a second, so that's why it's so dark to start with. If I had put my ISO here at 1600 and gave it more of this coloring, the noise levels would be pretty similar. As long as you're giving your image enough light, your noise isn't going to be super out of control. But when you are down here, if it was 1600 ISO and it was still this dark, that's when you're going to get crazy amounts of noise. So see, this is pretty noisy, and it's just because that image was so dark to start with that there's not a lot for the camera to work with. But if you're shooting lighter, I know that's repetitive, it will give you more of this look, even with a higher ISO. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to be doing some more of these tutorials and going more in depth on different things. So if you have any special requests, let me know. And if not, then I'll just come up with that on my own. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.